All right, Mark's, Evan, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Okay. Um, Hi, I'm Evan Smith from Cogent Law Group. I have been a partner here for almost since the firm was founded. And uh, my career started out as I started as an intellectual property specialist, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and licensing. Um, Moved from there into Uh, I became a partner in a large law firm and the head of their IP department, started their patent practice and uh, decided, within a few years that I didn't really want to be a big law lawyer for the rest of my life. I liked working with entrepreneurs, uh, really didn't like the big firm vibe and politics. So I left to be chief operating officer of one of my startup company clients, pioneer in biometric identification. And that was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. I did that for 4 years. I got to travel all over the world. We built really cool stuff and installed it in airports in multiple countries. Um, and then, unfortunately, I didn't get rich doing that. So I am then went through a period where I was back and forth between practicing law and being a startup executive, entrepreneur, founder of several startups. Some of them did well and we made money. Some of them didn't go anyplace. But then ended up at Cogent, and Cogent has a different business model than most law firms. We keep our overhead very low, um, so that we can be flexible with the attorneys who are part of the firm and offer clients basically lower rates for people who are very experienced. Um, and hopefully Marcus will show up in a few minutes. He's having a little trouble getting into the
He's
webinar, but
here.
I
No,
will.
I see
he's here
him.
Oh,
now.
perfect.
Mhm.
We're all set.
Marcus, your timing is awesome because I just finished talking about myself, and we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and sort of how you got where you are. And I was about to tell people that I am a person who has both succeeded and failed in various ways, and I think most people say, and I certainly think that I learned more from the times when things didn't go well than the times when everything went the way I wanted it to.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you've got some experiences like that in your past. But go ahead and tell us about the NFL and what you've done since then.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. So my name is Marcus Ogden. I am from Washington, D.C. I live in Fuquay, Varina, North Carolina. It's about 30 minutes outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I went to Howard University. I got drafted into the National Football League by the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2003. I was drafted by my rookie head coach, Jack Del Rio, who was amazing, who was actually an NFL player himself, played for the Minnesota Vikings and the Raiders as a middle linebacker. And it was fantastic, Evan. I got a chance to learn a lot of great things about how to handle pressure and how to be resilient, how to bounce back. And one of my favorite things that I learned from the NFL was actually from Jack Del Rio, how to be your own CEO, how to be your own chief executive officer. And Jack talked about being the type of person that was self-starting, that was inspirational, didn't wait around for others. And that's the type of person I am now in my life. Because after my career in the NFL, I got to construction, I built something special, multi eight-figure business in a year, annually. We were crushing it. And unfortunately, because of my ego, my bravado, I ended up losing everything that I owned, Evan, in 2013 and having to move to Raleigh, North Carolina with only $400 to my name. And so, talk about learning lessons. That experience, because it wasn't a failure, because I learned from it, taught me a lot. And I now have bounced back since then as a speaker, coach, consultant. I had a spoiled milk rock bottom moment in 2013 September where somebody's trash and rotten meat and nasty protruding garbage, right, Evan, got all over me. And that was my wake up call. And that allowed me to understand if I don't change how I think or how I, my accountability and become more accountable, I'm going to always be right here on this curb. So that was the moment that I started to speak and turn my life around and start in 2013. It didn't go far, but it didn't go fast, far. And so I had to really make some adjustments and go through some struggles, but then I was able to pick up a couple of great tips, got coached, learned the business, and now here we are 12 and a half years later, spoken for over 90 Fortune 500 clients. It's just been amazing, and author and speaker and all this stuff. And so been very, very fortunate, in that regard. But yeah, like you, right? I've been up, I've been down, but I've learned a lot from those downs that have kept me going in my life today.
I hear you. So, our topic today is scaling without breaking, how leaders build, protect, and grow under pressure. So, Marcus and I are going to just kind of have a discussion and chip in whatever thoughts we have. We're going to, talk a little bit about businesses and how they get started and how they grow and what the issues are that you have to watch out for as you're growing. And I think we've both had some experiences of our own. I've had more experiences with clients who, because a lot of times when people come to a lawyer, it's because they've got a problem. And so I've worked through a lot of issues, growing and governance and partnership and personnel issues with a whole bunch of clients. Um, Somehow I got really old. I've been a lawyer for 36 years now, and so I've seen a lot of stuff. But I think the uh, one thing that I would start out saying is I don't think growth necessarily causes problems, but it definitely reveals whatever problems there are in your underlying infrastructure and the way you've got the company set up and the people you have. Um, and that as you start to grow significantly, uh, my experience is, that's sort of when you see a bunch of things happen. You see um, issues arise in various areas of your business, maybe financial, intellectual property, whether you've got your company documents in order when you go out and try to raise money, um, all sorts of issues that can come up. Um, but my experience also, that's the time when you're on the verge of success is when the time that the true colors of some of your partners in the business are going to come out. And impending success seems to make people suddenly greedy. They start realizing how much this company is about to be worth. It's not worth it yet because we're at the bottom of the hockey stick here. We're just about to take off and everybody knows it. And they start calculating out how much the company is going to be worth and what their share is and start some people, not everybody. I've been blessed with some really great partners, really great people that I've done business with over the years who are the kind of people who's, you just absolutely can trust and rely on, and you don't need anything in writing from them. I mean, you do it anyway because it's good practice. And what if they die and then nobody knows what your agreement was? But those people who are really great are wonderful when you find them. Sometimes you think somebody's really great and they turn out not to be. And you will find, I think, that sort of greed pops into place when, they start thinking, wow, this company is going to be worth $200 million. And um, but I've only got 5% of it. Um, how can I, like how can I get more, force my way into having more money than I'm already going to get? And you know, you, it's hard for me to get into that mindset because that's kind of not who I am, um, but it's something I've observed that people do that. Marcus, what I mean, tell us, about your construction company. What, were there any were there any interpersonal issues there or any structural issues, uh, in terms of the paperwork or the way things were set up that were, sort of ticking time bombs that eventually blew up?
Yeah, that's a great question, Evan. The number one thing that happened to us is we got into commercial construction. And as you talk about partnerships, right, Evan? Someone think you know someone, good relationship. Well, my business partner told me he had experience from an operational perspective in construction, commercial. In reality, right, Evan, he had experience in residential construction, not commercial. They are not the
Two different
same thing.
animals, right?
Two different animals. They're not even close to the same. Residential is so much easier. You get deposits, you have a schedule. People aren't, if you don't get paid, you can stop work. There's so many more amazing things to protect you in residential. Commercial is a much different animal. You don't ever really get deposits. You don't pay because sometimes take 30, 60, sometimes even 90 or 120 days. You're carrying a job a lot of times. Bonds are expensive. You got to pay your payroll every week, every 2 weeks. And if you're in like what we did, right, Evan? We got into concrete and demolition and did well. We got lucky. But what happened is, Evan, talk about structural and not having the right foundation. We then switched and got into earthwork and site work. And that's another different animal within itself. We had no proper funding to get into that business. We didn't have enough in bank lines of credit. We didn't have enough in equipment lines. We didn't own any equipment. All of our equipment we got from the bank, we owned it, but we're still paying down the expense.
Mhm.
So we weren't able to really make any huge profit off of that because we were constantly trying to bid work and we didn't have enough margins. And then we just started making a bunch of money. But what happened is everything went right, right? Everything kind of worked out. We had the right people, the right this, the right that. As the company grew and got bigger and we got more jobs and we got more, purchase orders, we didn't have enough qualified people out in the field. We instead of having like 4 jobs we could control, we would get 8 or we would have 10. And we didn't have enough qualified people like foremen or superintendents or general superintendents, and we were not meeting schedule over and over and over again. And so what happened is, as jobs were not getting done, we were having to rob Peter to pay Paul from jobs that were going well, and it started to suck out any type of like profit that we had. And then we got into a huge job for a huge client, and I saw our foundation crumble because we ended up having to do extra work for the client. And what I realized at the time is I thought we could handle it. Looking back at today with a fresh set of eyes, saying not being in it, looking at it, not being inside of it, I realized, Evan, the minute that that job required us to do a bunch of extra change order work was the beginning of the end. And we ended up crashing and burning about 90 days after we finished all that work. We got all that work done. And what happened is the general contractor denied our change order. The developer denied our change order because we didn't get things done on schedule or time frame as needed be, and we had no signed change order. Again, lack of people, lack of structure, lack of systems, and we ended up going bankrupt when the bank shut us down December 23rd, 2012, Evan. That was it for us. So, to answer your question, the
Mhm.
problem with our business Number one, we were never in the right business. Number one, we should have been in residential construction, not commercial. But that was step number one wrong. Number two, we weren't funded properly for the type of work we were doing, and especially what we evolved into site work, earthwork, utilities. And then number three, at the end of the day, we had zero systems in place, not from an internal perspective or external. And I tell my clients all the time, know your business, have proper funding, and please create systems because you cannot automate if you don't have a system. I tell my clients, systemize, then automate.
Yeah. Well, and you've got to build that kind of infrastructure at the moment when you have time and energy to build it, not when success has made it urgent. And then you're sort of you're always behind then in trying to catch up to your level of success.
Always.
Um, so I mean that and, I think that's a very common story. But it's and I appreciate your humility and being right out front with everybody and okay, I've looked back and these are the five things that I could have done differently. Um, I've got a similar story, uh, similar and not similar, but similar in that we can look at everything I did wrong. Um, the second startup company that I formed after the international operation that I talked about, same biometric ID technology. I took my engineering team from the former company and a couple of other people, and we started a new company to build these systems for hospitals and clinics for patient identification. And we built the most fantastic system in the world. It really worked well. It was affordable. We were in three major clinics in New York City. We had pilot projects scheduled to be installed at four major hospitals around the country. People were talking about this. They were seeing it. They were saying, wow, this is really good stuff. Um, we took, I guess, almost $3 million from a venture investor, in order to get ourselves, we had the prototypes and the system all sort of designed, but we had to go into production and then be able to fund, these pilot projects and then the subsequent sales. So took the money from the venture investor. I thought that I knew my friends that were in this company with me, because we'd been in the company before together, and I thought I could trust them. I didn't think the venture investor would sort of do a 180 in terms of what they wanted to do. They invested, I thought, in our team and our business plan, and that was they believed that we were going to be successful, and we were knocking out the milestones. I mean, we were doing it all right. Um, and their guy that was assigned to work with our company, uh, just sort of decided that he didn't like our business plan and he thought that he could do it a lot operationally a lot cheaper, if we got rid of me and the chief technology officer and made him the CEO. And unfortunately, the two of us we were the reason that it was succeeding because we had the relationships we were the ones that were going and selling it to the hospitals. We were the ones that were going and training people to use it and making the project successful. And there wasn't anybody else that could do that. So this guy, basically started a battle for control of the company. And I thought that we were going to win that battle because among four of us who were the founders, uh, we had more than 50% of the stock. So we could basically block whatever was going on. So what these guys did, first of all, they had invested in a as a convertible note, so they immediately converted their entire investment to stock, which sounds great because then we don't have to make payments on the loan or anything. It's just okay, you're all equity now. Uh, but it gave them more stock to vote with. Um, then they basically bribed two of my co-founders to switch sides and vote with them. They offered, they told these guys, hey, we're going to pay you three times as much as you're making right now, and we're going to put you in charge of everything, and all you've got to do is vote for us in terms of control of the company. Um, so basically they won that proxy war, and suddenly the people who were creating the thing were a minority vote. The only thing that saved us at all is that we had employment contracts that they had no reason not to honor. So they still had to, it's like I was still the CEO and they still had to pay me, um, but they were fighting everything that we were trying to do. So, there were a bunch of lessons there for me. Um, One is don't take for granted um, that your friends are your friends. I mean, the other two co-founders, were people that, that I would still do anything with them anytime. They're just great people. Um, these other two guys, the they were traitors. They got bought off and they voted for the other side. Um, Point number two, I was so focused uh, on getting to the finish line, on making those sales, on building the business. Um, I didn't spend a lot of time, sort of hand holding the smaller investors. If I had, there were enough early stage investors and, enough stock there that we could have still won if they were on my side. But having got their money and doing everything that I was supposed to be doing and sending out reports to them every month, telling them how great everything was going, I thought that was enough. But I should have been maintaining those relationships better. Um, the other thing is that our documents weren't good enough. Um, One of the things that I think um, one of the things that's important in setting up the company, and if you go set a company up with uh, Rocket Lawyer or some, whoever, uh, they're going to give you some kind of standard documents that I really don't recommend because what people are doing now is much more sophisticated. We are, for a lot of our startup companies, we're creating two classes of common stock or membership units for LLCs. Uh, and we're doing it like Mark Zuckerberg did when he founded Facebook. He has the kind of stock that has 10 votes per share, and everybody else in the world has the kind of stock that has one vote per share. And that's why he still runs the whole thing, and nobody can question his decisions. Um, Now, yeah, you can take that overboard, but it's good. It's good to make sure that you have a solid hold on control, and there are a bunch of different ways of doing that. Um, Another thing that you have to worry about in terms of those documents is uh, founders or executives who just suddenly ghost you or otherwise don't deliver. You've given people a bunch of stock, and they're part of your company. They have voting rights, and then they kind of stop showing up, or they have a different attitude about what ought to happen, and they're either gone or they're not on your side anymore. And there are lots of ways of protecting yourself against that in your initial documents. The formation documents, operating agreements, shareholder agreements, bylaws can all have provisions that basically allow you to get rid of somebody that's not performing or that's not cooperating. And you know, people who hold voting rights can become an obstacle at a key point, as they did in my experience. And there are ways to prevent that. That I wasn't, I was either too naive or not sophisticated enough, even being a lawyer, to know that I really needed those things. So I found, just a bunch of things looking back that, it's like I could have prevented that. We could have ended up staying the course, and I think the company was on track to be really successful. Um, we ended up, we, I said to them, look, we got to buy you out and you got to buy us out because we totally disagree on the direction here and we're not going to get any place together. So we negotiated for a while. They ended up buying us out. Um, and we made some money, but it wasn't the kind of money that we should have made because if we had been in it, when our business plan hit and it took off, we would have had a lot of money. Um, it was slim satisfaction and sad, really, that after we left, they never installed the system at another place after that and never made any sales at all. It just went down the drain. And, so it was a lot of effort creating something really good that didn't go anywhere. But like you, Marcus, I look back and say, okay, I learned a lot here. I wouldn't do it the same way again. And, and I've had many clients who we're working with that, we're avoiding those kinds of issues in the way that we set up their documents and companies. Um, I also, unfortunately, have clients who come to me with a problem because we didn't do their documents. They got them, so they got where they are by another path, and then we ended up um, really trying to dig them out of a big hole where they've got a founder that's disappeared and but still has a bunch of stock, and we can't get it back, and we can't move the company forward. Uh, I have a client who their founder, um, co-founder, uh, basically decided that she knew how to run the business better, and she didn't think my client was contributing enough effort. So she just decided to take it over. She cleaned out the bank account, changed the lock on the door, uh, and there should have been faster, more effective ways to deal with something that crazy in the operating agreement of that LLC. Um, but there wasn't. So the only thing left to do was litigate. And we eventually settled the litigation and sold the business to the other, uh, to the person that was trying to steal it. But what a hassle. So anyway, that's definitely a lesson that a bunch of the things that you do when at the very outset, when you are setting up the business, when you are bringing in your partners and coworkers, uh, those the way you structure those things and the way the deal uh, goes is it can make a huge difference how you start out. Um, well, what's your take on that, Marcus? How, what have you seen that that people could do to, to sort of avoid problems?
What people could do, right, Evan, to avoid problems is hire the right people around them, right? You can call it a cabinet, you can call it your dream team, you can call it your support staff, call it whatever you want to call it, but have those experts around you so that as you are navigating seas that you don't
Hmm.
know or are difficult, you can really find out about yourself by how good you are at not trying to always come up with the right answer or the answers in general and lean on your team. Lean on your people. Evan, that is one thing that I really wish I had done in my business. I had a business partner, but I did not have a coach. I did not have a good legal team set up. I did not have a good accountant or a good banker. Like I had people in those positions, but I didn't have excellent people in those positions. I remember, and you said it so well, Evan. I remember when things went bad, I ended up trying to hire a huge, phenomenal law firm in Baltimore. Fantastic operation, great group, great people, but it was too late. It was too late because what happened is by the time that I hired them or was going to engage them, they said, "Well, Marcus, you did this extra work." I said, "Yes. Good. Where's the contract?" And I showed them the contract and they said, "Okay, where's the change order?" I said, "I don't have one." So you're telling you did almost $2 to $3 million of extra work with no signed change order? I said, "Yeah," because I was under extreme pressure from the client, and they were
Hmm.
threatening to call my bond in. They're threatening to go do all these things to me. And I didn't have that dream team around me. And by the time I found some good people in that legal department, it was too late and there was absolutely nothing they could do.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a coach, somebody like in my business today, right? I have a coach. I meet with my coach
Hmm.
every week, strategy, systems. We look at our podcast downloads. We look at our coaching clients that we get, speaking jobs that we win, consulting clients, podcast sponsor. Like it is a very structured system. It takes about 20 minutes each week, but it's structured. And I'm excited to have
Hmm.
that call because I can let him know what we've done from the prior week. Have we advanced? Have we stayed the same? Have we regressed? Have we
Hmm.
closed more business or not? So it keeps me accountable. So if you're listening to this awesome, webinar, if you want to give yourself the best chance to thrive and grow in business, you need to have a dream team around you. Again, like a cogent law. Like that is the whole point, right? A cogent law will keep you from making the type of mistakes that I made. I should have never in a million years did all that extra work, Evan, without a signed change order. But I trusted the client. I shook their hand and said, "Marcus, don't worry about it." They shook my hand and said, "We got you covered. We will take care of it." Because again, right, Evan, I was a minority contractor as well in Baltimore City and the state of
Hmm.
Maryland. So I had that certification, which in reality, Evan, kind of gave me a false sense of security. It made me feel, well, they're
Hmm.
not going to hurt me. They're not going to put me under. They're not going to ruin my business. I'm their minority contractor. They need me on this job to fulfill the requirements. Well, it's
Yeah.
again, you have to sign a certain amount of percentages of minority, but that doesn't mean they have to finish the job. So it's kind of that loophole. So again, having the right people like a cogent law on your team to support you and keep you from making those decisions. Again, Evan said it great. A lot of times people call him or cogent law because they need to fix a problem. Wouldn't it be nice to actually have a lawyer or legal team you can call to get advice so you don't make a mistake? That'd be awesome. But
That's,
that's
and that's the kind of relationship you want to look for sure. And I mean, Marcus, you do a lot of coaching, right?
yes.
So so that's, I mean, that's, I think your point that you don't just need the professional sort of certified players, the lawyers and the accountants, and um, you do need sort of business advice and strategic advice and motivational advice and things like that. You mentioned you've got a coach. I mean, look, if coaches need coaches, then for sure, entrepreneurs need coaches. And I think you're absolutely right. Building those. Um, I like that you called it a cabinet. It's like, okay, this is your this is your team, and these are the people that you have collected that have all the kinds of expertise that you don't have, or at least not in depth. And that's a critical thing. Knowing what you're good at and what you know, and knowing, sort of how to fill in the areas where you're going to need some advice. And that's, building a cabinet like you suggested is the thing.
Evan, there's five keys to a successful business. And I don't care what you start, how you start, what it is. There are five fundamental keys to grow a thriving business. Number one is your branding. What do you stand for? What's your mission? What's your mantra? So, for example, right, Evan, we have a podcast, and we're very excited. We just got James Murray, goes by Murr, from Impractical Jokers, to come onto our podcast for an interview. He just talked maybe like a half an hour ago. He's coming onto our podcast. Has almost 2 million Instagram followers. Super funny guy, great guy. What he loved about our podcast, right, was the branding of it. Get authentic with Marcus Ogden. Everything authentic with authenticity is about our podcast. On our speaking or coaching side, right, Evan? It's the bison mentality, how to thrive through any storm. The bison is the only animal that charges directly into the eye of the storm. It's the only animal, Evan, and they do that because they know the fastest way out of a storm is through a storm. And so, also, that is kind of our branding. So, that's what people know us by, right? So that's number one, is you want to have your branding, your mission or mantra, that's all intact. Okay. Number two is your marketing. If people don't know you exist, they will never ever buy your product or service because they don't know about you. And that's part of the reason too, Evan, we started the podcast for marketing to attract people. Stop always recruiting people. Number three is sales. It's the transfer of energy and enthusiasm onto that potential client where they want to partake in your product and or service. Number four, okay, Evan, it's going to be the ability, talk about marketing. It's all about, I'm sorry, sales. It's operations. So you have branding, you have marketing, you have sales, you have operations, which is executing on that sale or that purchase order. And number five is finance, collecting your money, reinvesting your money to grow your business. So if you're trying to grow a business as an entrepreneur, branding, marketing, sales, operations, and finance are the five key pillars that you need to have a thriving business. One of my favorite quotes, right, Evan, is smooth seas never made skilled sailors. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Your journey is not going to be
Nice,
easy, but having the right people,
nice.
the right cabinet, the right pillars, it'll allow you to navigate and push forward through rough or treacherous seas.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Hey, two things I just realized that, well, one thing I realized that I should have said at the outset. My partner in the law firm, Tracy, who was supposed to be the third person on this webinar and is a fantastic expert in all kinds of, uh, you know, business law and deals and everything else, um, got stuck in the massive storms that wrecked air travel around Chicago yesterday.
Mhm.
Flight got canceled. She's on an airplane right now, which is why she's not here with us. But we miss her, and that's why it's just the two of us. Um, Another thing that I think we've got about 15 minutes left, and we'll continue to kind of talk about some of these things that you ought to think about, sort of before you hit the big growth phase and things you need to get in order. But if anybody wants to ask questions, please, put them in the chat, and Jessica, who's running the webinar for us, will jump in and ask us the questions, and we'll try to answer. Um, I have the farmers in New England had this expression, good fences make good neighbors. And I've always thought that that really applies to law as well. And in that sense, good contracts make good neighbors. And the idea of good fences make good neighbors was that if you have a well-repaired, clear fence uh, between your properties, you're good neighbors because you know where the boundary is. You know what you're
Mhm.
supposed to do. Your cattle aren't over grazing in your neighbor's land by accident. He's not coming over and cutting down a bunch of your timber by accident, thinking it belongs to him, because everybody knows where the line is. Um, and I think contracts are that way. Documents are that way in terms of how you set up the company, in terms of the deals. Uh, Marcus, you experienced this. The handshake that hey, we're gonna implement this change order. Um, how many of us would have said that, hey, that's great. A lot of us would have said that's
Es-
great.
Especially, Evan, when I had worked for them before on another job, 2-minute walk down the street for them, where they were paying us $50,000 checks, advance payments. Were giving us a hand, were helping us out, were doing things like they were literally giving us money early. Like it was not normal, but I just thought it was the relationship that we were building. And then I come to find out, of course, going down the path, that was always going to be. They knew that job site had challenges, and we didn't know it. And again, I take full responsibility, full accountability. I should have never done anything without a signed change order. But I trusted them because they were a client previous, and we were actually still working on that job, wrapping it
Mhm.
up, coming over to the other job. And on that job, they were paying us early, advance, everything. Come to this job where we finished everything for our contract. It was great. But once that problem hit and that site wouldn't dry, they went from as nice and as pleasant to as hard as nails. No wriggle room, no bend. Get it done now, or we're calling your bond.
And perfect example of good fences make good neighbors translates into good contracts make good business people, good business partners. And obviously you wish that you had got that in writing from them because that could have saved your company in hindsight.
For
Hey,
sure.
we've got a question from Devin. Uh, Says, Marcus, you spoke of building a cabinet. Can you
Mhm.
give us some pointers on how to go about selecting your cabinet?
That's a fantastic question. So, what you want to do is, Devin, you want to talk to some of your trusted people in your network. Ask them who are they using, who are their lawyer they use, or their banker, or their CPA, or their coach, and get about 3 people in each position to interview and see who fits you. And also, I call it, Devin, an alignment around a unified vision. Whoever you're working with, if they don't align to where you want to go, right? If they're not aspirational and inspirational, aspirational means they're going to cast the vision with you. Inspiration means they're going to help you bring it to life. If you see people, lawyers, bankers, accountants, bookkeepers, coaches, whomever is not aligned with you and where you want to go, do not make that hire. So I tell people that's how I found my business coach. One of my good friends and clients, I asked her for 3 referrals. She gave me 3 referrals that I trusted her. I've known her for years. We worked together, and then she gave me 3 referrals. I interviewed all 3. I then hired my coach, George Sandman, because I love his vision and I love what he has as far as tools and offerings. And George has helped me become a consummate professional in every sense of the word, from branding, marketing, sales, ops, and finance, especially around marketing. Because I'm very good at sales and I can do work, but he helped me tremendously with marketing, how to improve the website, how to do SEO, how to find people to bring in to help create workflows or lead magnets, how to make the quality of your stuff better, what is your mission, right? What do you stand for? So again, you want to talk to your trusted people and you want to ask them for referrals. And then you want to interview at least 3 people in each position and then find who best is qualified and fits you.
That's a solid answer. I like that. Um, so let's see. Next question from Natasha. Likes the point about good fences make good neighbors. In my experience, how have you seen buy-sell agreements create clear rules around ownership, control, exits, and decision-making before growth puts pressure on the partnership? Is that something you recommend to your clients? So 100%. Um, and you can implement these kinds of agreements and arrangements in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes they're called buy-sell agreements. Sometimes they're stockholder or member agreements, depending if it's a corporation or an LLC. Sometimes these things are built into the bylaws. Sometimes they're built into the documents where we issue stock to the founders. Um, but there's no question. You have to have, if you want to be successful, you have to set up those rules and understandings up front. Um, here's a quick example. Um, I've had a bunch of, it's pretty common um, for co-founders to, you have 2 founders, 3 founders, 4 founders that put a company together and you split the stock among you in a way that seems fair, and everybody's going to work hard, and everybody does up to a certain point, and then somebody disappears. Um, this does not always happen because your co-founder is a bad person. Sometimes this happens because their mother has cancer and they need to be there, and they just can't work for the next 6 months. Sometimes, you take a trip to China and you meet somebody wonderful and you get married and live in China now. And you're not back here working on the company anymore. Um, these aren't horrible things or horrible people, but these are things that happen in real life. And believe me when I say that the time to figure out what the rules are for dealing with every kind of situation like that, somebody, mismal or nonfeasance for, all kinds of various reasons, somebody isn't any longer doing what you expected and what they were supposed to do. Um, how you handle that can really only be settled in a peaceful way before it ever happens, when that's all theoretical. See what I mean? Because if you wait until you get into that situation, then the person who needs 6 months off to take care of their mother is going to push back really hard on having their control or their stock or their, you know, basically getting what they have diminished as a result of not contributing, because they're going to say, hey, this is, I'm not being bad. This is just something I have to do. Um, when none of these situations exist at the very outset is the time that I want to plan for that for clients. Then we ask, hey, what happens? What do you think should happen, the two or three of you, if somebody stops contributing? And everybody kind of, oh yeah, okay, this is what should happen. So we write that down, and now that's the rule. And it's the good contracts make good business partners thing all over again, because if you don't have a rule in place, then it's an argument. But if everybody agreed to and signed off on a rule for how to handle something, then they don't really have a leg to stand on when they want to come back and say, oh, well, that's not fair. It should be something different. Everybody says, look, that's what we wrote down. That's what everybody agreed to. That's what we have to do. And whether you like it or not, now that you're on the receiving end of the penalties. So, I mean, excellent question, Natasha. I think that is 100% the kind of thing that you have to work out up front when you go into the business partnership, because a year or two down the road, when you actually have the problem, it is a really hard time to negotiate a fair solution. So, Marcus, any sort of final thoughts or charges to our listeners in terms of, I mean, we got a minute or two left, and
Yeah, I have a great quote, Evan, I want to leave the group with. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. You must continue to do things daily, consistently, with discipline, drive, and resilience to continue pushing and thriving under pressure to build your business and without making those mistakes and getting yourself in a bad position. Again, everything you do daily adds up. So, like Aristotle said, therefore, excellence is not an act. It's not something you do every once in a while. It's a habit, which means you do it every single day. So, in order to get where you want in your business, have people like Cogent Law around you, make things, do things to be excellent. Therefore, it becomes second nature and you do it automatically without having even to think about it.
well said. Well said. I think that's an excellent way to wrap things up. Thank you all for attending, and we will uh, we'll look at maybe doing a part two of this, and including Tracy again in that, because I know she has a lot of great things to contribute to this discussion as well. So thanks, Marcus. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.
You too. Thanks, everybody.